What's going on, everyone? We've got a crazy video today. I haven't done this in a while, but we're going to be doing a full leader tier list for every single leader in the game. Strap yourselves in, guys. I've done this for pretty much every set, and we are close to the maximum amount of leaders we will see in a specific Premier format. 5 total sets, each with 18 leaders, leads to a crazy amount, 90 different leaders that we got to talk about today. Guys, this is getting incredible. Honestly, my timestamps down below, usually I put each leader. I don't even think I could do that right now because the description box is gonna get too big. So I will try to put images as we go along of each leader bigger on screen, and then I will also put each at least aspect to differentiate in the timestamps down below. But my gosh, is this going to be a massive video, and I cannot wait. So if you guys like the video, guys, 10,000 subscribers. As of recording this video, we're not there, but as soon as I post this, we probably will be. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone, including my patrons, but everyone at large for supporting the channel, watching the videos, etc. It has been an absolute blast. But let's dive straight into the tiers first before we talk about each leader category. All right, some of you know the drill and some of you don't. But we're going to talk about the tiers first. Starting us off with the S tier leaders. Now, I'm just trying to make this quick and simple, guys. S tier leaders, they are the meta. These are the leaders to beat. They either have multiple deck combinations or just a single deck that really, really runs the meta. These are the decks you have to build around. These leaders are the ones you have to be concerned with. A perfect example of this is something like Akira in previous metas. We'll see what she ends up here in this list. Maybe a little spoilers there, but okay. I have the Kira flip. This is the thing I need to play around, and I need to be able to actually manage this when I'm constructing my deck, because this is the thing I need to worry about. I'm going to fight it so often that it is a must deal with. A tier leaders, these are going to be the meta viable ones that also have a little bit of an edge to them to the way they actually can do some good work. A perfect example of a leader that I view as A tier in most metas in the past was Director Krennic. This is one that was just overall good. It was really, really solid to get this like damage units bonus power. And then the fact that he deploys so early with the restoring really gave you that edge against some other leaders that allows you to reach into the late game and utilize the Villainy command oftentimes shell that he was built around. B tier leaders, these are the ones that are more so for the store showdowns. They still have some meta viability, but the S tier leaders, those are the ones that are going to be the competitive runners. Those are the ones that you really want to bring to the competitive events to have the best chances. The A tier ones are the ones that, yes, you can win, but a little bit harder than the S tier ones. The B tier ones, those are the ones that squeak out some wins every once in a while, but usually on average going to have a little bit of a rougher time. In the past, this usually would have been something like a Luke deck is what I view. The Luke Greens of the world still were very, very solid, but not quite as competitively viable as some other ones in A and S tier, although in set 4, it was pretty good. C tier leaders, these are going to be the ones that have some sort of niche something going on for them where, okay, I can see why you're playing and I can see what you're trying to do. Maybe you bring it to a store showdown and squeak out a win, but in general, they are relatively weak. They are either going to have some sort of ability that seems pretty adjacent to another leader on the list, which is why they get shoved down in the C tier. But maybe they have something going for them to where they're not complete garbage, which is where our D tier lies. D tier leaders, these are the ones that really truly have abilities or effects or deploy costs that are so miserable that I just would not utilize them ever, in at least the initial opinions of them. Now, some of these leaders we've had for a while, but at least set 5, some of these are going to be a little bit of not speculation necessarily because we've played with a lot of these leaders, but well, we'll wait to see if someone breaks them. But the D tier ones, these are the ones I can't imagine being broken to the point where they're going to become a meta option. At most, D tier leaders are going to squeak out a win every once in a while. And technically, even though I mentioned like, okay, you're squeaking out wins with B tier or C tier leaders, you could still do so at competitive events. That's just kind of the nature of Star Wars Unlimited because the game has been relatively balanced pretty evenly. But yeah, D tier leaders, I would generally avoid these ones. With that said, let's dive into our Vigilance category first. We get to start off with Gar Saxon, and I just want to mention really quickly here that I will be putting them on the list, and I'll probably be adjusting them as I get more leaders on the list, because I do like to kind of put them in order. It's not just S tier, then A tier. There is kind of like better A tier and a weaker A tier, as an example. But starting off with Gar Saxon here, again, try to keep the bigger image on screen for you all to see, so that you can follow along. This guy's been really excellent, and really he came into his own when we had the director Krennic and the well, in set 5 Shinhati and the Secretive Sages, like all these units that kind of just come down and have a baseline. I come down with a shield token, or I come down with an experience token, or I come down with some sort of upgrade. So that upgrade is inherently more valuable. But now with set 5, as I mentioned, you get Secretive Sage, which is amazing because that brings you up to 3 different cards that are 2/2 shields on turn 1 that have no downside, right? They become 3/2s in Gar Saxon, which is absolutely amazing. If you're playing Cunning, assuming that, then you really get some major bonuses. Axe Wolves is an amazing addition, and Shinhati is an amazing addition from set 5. You even get access to Darth Vader plus Xian Flurry if you want to. There are just so many great additions from set 5 with Gar Saxon. This leader was already putting up results in the past. I don't really see him being below A tier in my opinion. This one has been an amazing leader. You also have options to go like Gar Saxon ECL nowadays with the ECL Vader, and just playing still Secretive Sages, Director Krennic, and all the good stuff that you already were playing. This leader has been quite solid. Luke, we just mentioned him earlier, but Luke, he is one of those leaders that, well, has been kind of a staple in the meta overall, in terms of this is the quintessential mid-range deck. Now, has he been always the best? No, but definitely with set 4, he has gotten a lot better, especially because the meta has shifted to where it favors the mid-range strategy of something like a Luke Skywalker. Now, Luke Green is usually where we're seeing this guy, and he does have some good things for him, for sure. But with set 5, we are looking towards Force combinations. And to be honest, well, I don't think it fits as well for Luke than other decks. And that's really what you're getting from set 5 is like the Yodas or the Yaddles in the early game or anything like that. Now, I do think Luke gets things like Kylo Ren Beck, which is an amazing option, and some other things. I do think he's going to get a lot better in terms of just from his previous iteration. But I don't really know if he's going to be competing on the level of some other lists. I think he ends up somewhere low A tier or high B tier. I'm going to keep him in the high B tier at the moment. Next up, we've got Lando. Now, this is one from the previous set. This one is someone that really is hard to utilize, mainly because his deploy cost is very late in the game. It's a 7 to deploy leader. We also have this action of forcing you to play space and ground units to even have the option of using his ability, because you have to pay 1, and then if you control a ground and space unit when you play a unit, you give a shield token to it, to a unit, I should say, which means you do have to play a mix of space and ground units in a deck that's usually a little bit more controlling because you have to get to the later game. It's not horrible. I do think there's something with Lando that pulls him out of the D tier, but in good conscience, I can't really put him past the C tier category. Usually Lando Green is where we're seeing him. A little bit of ramp, a little bit of sentinel body. You can definitely really snuff the space arena with Lando because of his sentinel as an upgrade. But outside of that, like if you're just looking for a sentinel ground units, well, Obi-Wan as a leader is going to be far better for you, and you have to utilize his action or his piloting mechanics to really get Lando some value, and it just doesn't happen nearly as often as you would hope for. Next up, we got Nute Gunray. This is one of the leaders that represents, in my opinion, a failed mechanic within the game. It's not something that really we've seen pop off. Nute Gunray with the whole exploit synergies has never really done a whole lot. The action to create more battle droids as your units are dying was obviously to kind of give you some more value to continuously exploit, but it just never really reached its mark. And honestly, the 6 deploy 2/8 body with more battle droids doesn't really actually do enough for you unless you're getting some sort of exploit value. And as I said, it just doesn't really work. Either the decks are too aggressive or too value oriented to where you're trying to set up and then play a big unit, doesn't actually outpace their value, etc. This to me is also a C tier leader. I'm actually going to put him underneath Lando. Next up, we've got Aiden. This is sort of like the quintessential control leader, just as like Luke was the quintessential mid-range value leader. Aiden, back from set 1, a little bit of value coming in from her. For every single unit that's dying, you're getting to heal a little bit of damage. Her deploy is definitely one of the weaker ones. 6 to deploy, 4/4 shielded. The shielded is not bad, certainly, but the stat line is pretty weak. So definitely a weaker one in general. But it did represent the kind of ideal control leader for a lot of control decks out there. Unfortunately, control is just not as good. So you really just want to be playing her as a mid-range leader with command. Well, while the healing is nice, I don't really see her outpacing a lot of the new options that we've got. Normally, I would be putting her in B tier, but I do think that because we've got more and more and more options in the game, I think she's just a C tier leader now. I actually don't think you should be using Aiden. Her value of being this controlling leader and being able to last in the game a little bit longer in the command space, just her niche has been filled a lot more with a lot more leaders in the game, especially with set 5, because we have 2 from set 5 that I do think just perform way better in the deck type that she would be playing in. Next up, we've got Chewbacca, a classic back from set 1, guys. This one, honestly, another one which I think is pretty straightforward. 7 to deploy is very late in the game. Yes, you get a Sentinel body, but we talked about Lando, how he has something to offer. We talked about Obi-Wan, how he has something to offer. We have other Sentinel leaders in the game at this point. He is not a unique leader, which he was for a while. It's just not something that I am very excited about, and the action just doesn't really do a whole lot, especially with a lot more Sentinels introduced in the game. I think this is one of those leaders where you just should not play. I think the only thing you could do with Chewbacca, and again, this is more of a meme style than an actual effective strategy, is like Chewbacca yellow Wookiee tribal, which is kind of fun to play, but again, not actually effective of a strategy. Again, the Sentinel aspect of Chewbacca could be interesting had we not gotten so many new cards that were actually pretty effective in, well, stopping your opponent from really aggressing you. And the payoff for Chewbacca is you get a 2/9 Sentinel that has this interesting grit mechanic, but again, a lot of things in the game can just go to knock out that leader in general immediately. And from set 5 here, our first one on the list from set 5, we've got Kanan. Kanan was definitely an interesting one when we're first looking at set 5 as a whole. One of the things that I was really curious about when we first started seeing spoilers for set 5 was, well, are we going to see enough creatures or specters for Kanan to actually do some work? Now, already in the game, there are a couple options you go with Kanan. The pay 1 to give a shield token to specter and creature units is actually a really effective ability. It's actually quite strong. And you can go to 2 different directions, Kanan red or Kanan well, actually, I found 3 different directions: Kanan red, Kanan blue, and Kanan green. But I think Kanan red is probably the strongest up there with Kanan blue, because you can do the Doom creature strategy. The fact that you have the Ghost and a lot of other Spectre units that are pretty strong, honestly, just putting shield tokens on your 4/1 Attune Fear Knock or your Sabine Wren in the early game can be pretty disruptive for your opponent. It's definitely not like A or S tier, but I do think it's a high B tier. It's been solid. It's not like incredible, but it is a solid leader. Then we've got Chirrut coming up next. This one is an old classic, one of the leaders that we really were leaning towards just because he was an early to deploy force leader. My oh my, have times changed because we've got so many more leaders that deploy earlier on and have the force tag on them. And because of that, Chirrut has gotten weaker and weaker and weaker because your action doesn't really do a whole lot in the game. And then your epic deploy with a 3/5 leader that just can't be defeated by like having 0 less HP in the turn is really not that great. Remember, you could still take down Chirrut if you need to. So to me, Chirrut's one of those leaders that is a remnant from the past time. I'd be curious to see if Chirrut is able to recover. I'm not willing to put him in D tier quite yet because he still is an early 5 to deploy force leader in Vigilance, which does give you some options, but you do have a lot more force options on 5 resources that make Chirrut's like edge a lot less than it was. So to me, this is going to be another C tier, and you could even argue that it is a D tier leader as well. Next up, we got Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of the leaders that has gotten a little bit better, I think, over the course of time. The actually heal 1 damage has been pretty effective against some strategies, but more importantly, the leader flip and this dealing damage or healing up and dealing damage is a lot of value generated for the deck. And that's something that has gotten better just because of the fact that the meta has gotten a lot slower in terms of what decks are really performing and a lot more value oriented. So playing a 4/7 leader that's going to give you a little bit of value by healing itself up and probably becoming a menace is something that you want. So Obi-Wan does fit in that category at least. And so I do like that for him. But outside of that, the edge isn't anything too crazy. Just the healing is going to give you a little bit of value here and there, but oftentimes not enough value to outpace the Lukes or the Kanans of the world. So to me, this is like a low B tier leader. And I know some of them are grouped up pretty closely, but as we start to fill in the rest of the list, a lot of this is going to separate across. The next one up, we've got Asajj. Asajj is going to be one from Jump to Lightspeed, one of the pilots here. Very, very fun mechanic. But honestly, Asajj was never one that really performed all that fantastically. Now, with set 5, I do think you're getting a couple of options that do give some interesting dynamic to Asajj. Something like an Ogdo Bogdo is actually really good in Asajj. So I do think you got some cool tools, and the force strategy does at least function with Asajj. But I don't know if she's really getting enough to pull her out of the C tier. The fact that you can only hit units in the same arena is pretty tough. And you also have an action from Darth Maul, the new set 5 Darth Maul, that is really similar to Asajj and oftentimes plays exactly the same way because you're going to play cards similar to Asajj, and you're even wanting to play Asajj red most of the time because of some of the options you get. Well, Darth Maul, I feel like, kind of fills her niche a little bit better. I'm going to drop her into the C tier as well. Director Krennic, guys, well, this one has gotten actually quite a bit better. Director Krennic, always a classic to me. Like, Krennic is like the classic Villainy Vigilance leader. He was like Krennic and Iden for me, but I do think Krennic is actually kind of stayed the test of time, which is really interesting. The extra damage from extra power from damaged units, as I said, is pretty valuable. 5 to deploy very early on in the game as a 2/7 restore 2 is actually really annoying. The restore 2 has been super, super valuable. And with set 5, Krennic ECL was the classic. And guess what? You get Vader. Boom. Suddenly, Krennic is one of the best decks to play with Vader as an ECL deck. Now, I do think there's some competition in that niche, but I do think Krennic is a great option to go that direction because of the restoring. I'm going to go ahead and put him in like low A or high B tier. I do think he still fits in the A tier for now. We'll just have to see how well some of the other Vigilance, Villainy command leaders perform. And another one from set 5 here in Ahsoka Tano. This one's been, well, really not that powerful. There's been a lot of leaders here that really want to utilize the Force, and honestly, a leader that can use the Force on will for something was really intriguing to me. But giving a friendly unit Sentinel after having to use the Force honestly hasn't been that effective. And the reason that is because there's a lot of units in the set that you're going to want to use the Force for instead. And using the Force multiple times in a turn can be a little bit tricky, especially if you're playing a Vigilance deck where you're probably not going to have, unless you're playing something that can generate a lot of value on their units, something that's going to have multiple units down at a given time to generate the Force for you multiple turns. One of the best cards in Force-based Vigilance decks is Chirrut, and Chirrut already has Sentinel. So while Ahsoka does have some things going for her, I do think it's a little bit weaker. The 5/6, 6 to deploy is a little bit later on in the game for a 5/6 more Sentinel defensive-based leader, but not a super high amount of toughness. So while Ahsoka's not horrible, I don't think she's amazing. I'm definitely going to be putting her in the C tier category as, well, her combination of the Force-based strategy just hasn't been as good as some other options in the list here. Next up, we got Kylo Ren, and I do think this leader is actually pretty decent. So obviously for the video I played was a complete meme deck. I mentioned it many times in the video, but I do think there is something there with playing Kylo Ren and playing a kind of Kylo Ren Data Vault or Kylo Ren ECL option, similar to Krennic utilizing Vader and all that stuff. I think Data Vault fits better for Kylo Ren than ECL because they don't have that E early deploy plus restoring option. So with Data Vault, you do get the 7 deploy Vader with the timely intervention Vader, and you do also get a couple of options here with a lot of value, right? The action to just discard cards to draw more cards can help you filter towards certain things. By putting upgrades in your deck to prepare for Kylo Ren, you kind of shrink the deck size down. And I know that doesn't matter a whole lot, but it does help you a little bit by putting in cards that honestly are not like incredible, but help you with the Kylo deploy and help you find the cards you need at the right moment. And so with Kylo deploy coming down, you slap a craving power on him or whatever other upgrade, he can come down, remove something, be a sentinel body, and be a high value leader unit. And that's actually not bad at all. So for me, I'm actually going to put him in the B tier. I don't think he is horrible at all. I do think he's got a dynamic to him that's really interesting. And you can even play Kylo Ren Red as well. And I think that's been pretty interesting as well, because you have things like lightsaber throw, which you're going to be playing lightsabers in the deck. You could even play Anakin in Kylo Ren and just discard the heroism upgrades to draw yourself some cards, which is a nice, powerful strategy as well. There are a lot of little dynamics that work pretty well with Kylo Ren to where I think you could build a pretty solid deck out of the parts available. Next up, we got Rose Tico. Rose Tico with the action to heal up some vehicle units. Honestly, I think this card has gotten a lot weaker in set 5. There are not a lot of vehicle units that you want to be playing in a set completely based around force mechanics when you need force units to actually attack in. I think Rose Tico, even though she wasn't a strong leader beforehand, I think she got significantly worse because of her inability to kind of fit with the cards that have been introduced in set 5. Obviously, healing 2 damage from a vehicle unit that attacks is pretty good. And I do think if you're playing like Rose Tico command, that's not bad. You know, you got blue leader coming down, you kill a unit, you get to ambush it, so you get to heal it that turn. Like, that's not horrible. You do get a 4/6 on 5 resources, which is also probably the best thing about her. I've said that many times. But she does not have, in my opinion, enough to pull her out of the D tier. I just don't view her as a leader that's actually incredibly powerful. And again, with set 5, I think people are going to be indexing so much more towards the options available because there's some powerful cards, such as like Force Throw, which gets so much better if you're just playing within the card strengths of set 5. And I don't think Rose Tico could take advantage of them nearly at all when you're playing around a deck with vehicle units and the whole set's based around force mechanics. There are a couple vehicles that you may want to consider, but again, it just doesn't fit all that well with a leader that's already been kind of mediocre. Next up, we got Talzin. Now, this one is a tough one. Honestly, this one is very tough to rate because we have not seen enough of Talzin, because she's a brand new leader, for me to put her in S tier. But, spoiler alert, I do think there's a chance that she reaches into the S tier category. So maybe this is just me hedging my bets a little bit, but I'm going to be dropping her in the A tier, but at the top end of A tier. And I think there is an argument that people could make for the S tier. I've played a lot of Talzin and a lot against Talzin. I think there's many combinations you can go with. I think Talzin Red is a great opportunity to benefit from things like Force Throw, Force Lightning, Sorceress Blast, all force combinations. The addition of her action really lets you kind of take advantage of weaker ambushing options that your opponent may have, like where they live with 1 HP, you can knock it out. Or just comboing with some other removal events to really finish off units. Take, for example, Force Throw. Well, now, you know, that's +1 damage if you have the Force with you, which is really nice. You get to take advantage of things like Talzin Assassins during the aspect combinations, Darth Tyrannus, etc. And you also have, well, Talzin ECL if you want to go that direction, or Data Vault, playing the Darth Vader synergy, but just playing a very early to deploy leader that's going to shrink down units, right? The 5 to deploy leader, 3/7 body, very tanky. But the -1/-1 on attack to different units can help you make a ton of those value trades. I could absolutely see an argument for low S tier. And I could even see an argument for like mid S tier, to be honest. But I myself have not seen enough of Talzin to really warrant her to be comparable to some of the S tier leaders that I have seen and have really had great effect to. But I would not blame anyone if you were to argue, yeah, Talzin should be S tier. Totally reasonable to me. Next up, we've got Thrawn, and Thrawn is one of those ones that has gotten a couple new tools from set 5. You saw me playing the Thrawn Cunning with the Legacy run and all that cool stuff. I do think Thrawn does have a few more when defeated abilities that are pretty solid, but to me, he's more of like that, you win it or you lose it type of deck, where you have some really incredible turns, you have some really incredible plays with certain combinations of Thrawn, and then other times you just don't draw the right combination of when defeated triggers to actually make a ton of value out of Thrawn's ability. Not terrible by any means, still a solid leader. I think he is kind of in the right spot. I would put him somewhere in the B tier here. Still valued, I can still put up a good fight, but just not quite in the A or S tier category. Next up, we've got Yoda. Now, this one actually did get quite a bit better. You've seen the deck already with the new Burn Yoda, with the new Rey being able to be revealed, deal 2 damage to something. You have a lot of Force units like Yaddle, Adi Gallia with the Force Throw that kind of work with Yoda, what you're wanting to do, and kind of keep pace with your opponent. A lot of those events and cheap removal options can really push Yoda into a better category. I actually think this guy is going to perform quite well, and I could see him being like a low A tier option or high B tier option. In a meta where you're getting later in the game, a 7 deploy leader isn't as devastating, and then you get the value of killing something off, and you get the Restore Tour, and with 9 toughness, that is a lot of toughness to contend with, and I do think opponents are going to struggle a little bit up against that. And one of the biggest things is, as I said, the option to really just push your opponent back when you have those cheap interaction events in Yoda Aggression. And next up, we've got probably the leader everyone's been waiting for, Kira, who we're just going to slot immediately into the S tier. A leader that has been absolute dominant, and I say dominant lightly because this is coming from like someone who's played in the Boba Fett era, the Jango era. Like I've played through that, and so I don't want to say dominant to that degree, but she has been as dominant as you can be without really looking for nerfs or bans from a deck. Kira Green has been amazing. Data Vault has been giving her so much additional power. And with the new set 5, honestly, there's not a crazy amount that you get with Kira. You do get the Supremacy Tie, and you do get Darth Vader, which are the 2 most important ones for me. But I don't think Kira's a list that you're going to want to run ECL with. There is an option. I've leaned more towards Data Vault, but it really depends on how the meta shapes up. I think both are options, ECL or Data Vault Kira. Now, Data Vault Kira, because she deploys so early, is just so nice to kind of extend the game a little bit longer with the kind of Overwhelming Barrage plus Kira flip. But then you get Timely Intervention Darth Vader, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing in the late game. And if you do go ECL, well, you get the ECL Vader, which is amazing a little bit earlier in the game, especially if you got Super Laser Technicians, if you've got resupplies. I mean, if you just think about the options you have with Kira, I've seen so many situations where someone just goes, turn 1, play Dr. Pershing. Turn 2, draw a card, play resupply. Turn 3, you keep drawing cards with Pershing. And then you flip Kira, play Overwhelming Barrage, wipe their board. If there's anything left, next turn, you go ECL on Darth Vader, knock out a leader, knock out another unit. And it is really tough to ever compete with that type of curve. And if you're playing Data Vault, well, then you just do something like, okay, play my Vader, play my other Vader with ECL or with my Timely Intervention from my Smuggle pile. Like, it just gets incredibly high value. And that's the thing. When you're playing Villainy, Vigilance, you just got so many value units that I think it's going to be really tough to contend with. Next up, we've got Finn. This is another Vigilance Heroism with an action that honestly just has not really done a whole lot. There hasn't been a ton of great options from the new set to really synergize with Finn's defeating your own own upgrades here. He does deploy on 5, similar to Rose. So he's got the 4/6 body, which honestly is the only thing going for him. But to me, this kind of fits in the same category as Rose Tico, where he just doesn't synergize all that well with the new set and has a similar effect where his ability isn't really working for you, wasn't really strong in the first place, has the same flip and kind of stat line. To me, Finn is just a weak leader, has always been in the D tier for the most part. Next up, we got Rey, and Rey has a couple options available for her. She is one that has actually gotten a good amount from set 5 as well, and she's one that's already been pretty strong from set 4. We've seen Rey Data Vault be one of the top meta options in set 4, and guess what? You can still run Rey Data Vault, and you get things like Caloran back, Yaddle, Gunji, General's Blade, Yoda, all sorts of options. Shatterpoint's amazing. And that's the thing with Rey, is that guess what? Yaddle and Gunji, both 2-powered units which get buffed up from Rey. So I do think she's kind of fitting right at home with the new set. And to me, she's going to be a solid one to contend with. I think she's going to be an absolute A tier option, just based on previous results from Rey. And you even have the option to go Rey Red with Tarkenton if you want, but more likely the Force option, because you can go Rey Red with Force Throws, Adi Gallia, Yaddle, and then curve into Ki-Adi-Mundis and Mace Windows and all that option. There's a lot of options with Rey here. And then lastly, we've got Nala Se from the Vigilance category. Guys, the ability to ignore clone aspects is just not good. I've mentioned this a lot. I don't think this leader has been very good. And with the new set, I mean, you do not get anything really if you're trying to synergize with Nala saying what she's trying to do. The 1/7 deploy for 4 just doesn't do anything. Like a 1/7 is not enough combat power or a block in your opponent's way to worry about. Even though it deploys so quickly, no relevant tags of her own. And then even the when defeated trigger for your other clone units doesn't really come into play all that often. She is a D tier to me. I will appease the Nala Se enjoyers, okay, by putting her at the top of D tier for now, because I do think, at least by playing the clone units with the Vigilance powerhouse cards in Villainy, you're better than Finn. But I'm not going to put her above D tier, because I do not believe she belongs above D tier. That said, we get to move on to our command leaders next. So for our first leader in command is an old classic. One of the first, actually the first video I made on the channel was a Leia deck. How far we've come from that point, guys. It has been more than a year and more than 300 videos made. Crazy, by the way. But Leia, working with Rebel units, really didn't get all that much from the new set. So the thing that Leia got really is, well, I guess you could play some Force units and play Leia Red and do the same thing as you were before. But in aggression, you didn't get anything from the new set as a Rebel. Honestly, the thing that I was more excited about was trying to play like a more value-oriented Leia Vigilance option. But that hasn't really paid off all that much with like Ezra and like Luthen trying to go that direction. But the action there hasn't been enough Rebels printed, okay? Set 4 didn't give you a crazy amount of them. Set 5 didn't give you a crazy amount of them. Set 4 did, and so the difference between from set 4 to set 5 hasn't really changed a whole lot. Set 4 did give you, the Chewbacca's, the red leaders, the blue leaders, the A-wings, which have all been pretty good. I just don't think that what you're trying to do with Leia is what you're trying to do in the meta, or what you should be trying to do in the meta. To me, she's like a C tier option. Unfortunately, I got to put Leia down that far. I do think Leia Red is still the way to go. And you didn't really get anything from the new set, unfortunately. But hey, that's where Leia exists now. Next up, we got Avar Chris. Avar is someone who I've been really having fun with, but that's about as far as it goes. She deploys too late. I know some people were talking about, come on, man, I've played Avar and you could deploy her on 6 resources or 5 resources or 4 resources or, whatever people were saying. Realistically, in the average Avar game, you are deploying her on 7 or 8 resources, which is not horrible. Well, 8 resources is very late in the game, but 7 resources is not bad at all. And you do get an 8-10 overwhelm. The problem with that is that a lot of what Force-based decks are trying to do in Heroism is play things like Ki-Adi-Mundi, or play things that are trying to stall out your game, get a little more value. And what you could do instead is just play a different leader and then play a Force base and kind of do all those things anyways. And you don't have to rely on Avar to try to go absolutely insane in your list. Like, yes, you could play potentially a 30 HP base, but you only lose 2 HP. It really hasn't been that big of a deal to play the common Force bases. And so while Avar does have that dynamic of being able to give you a couple more options to use the Force multiple times in a turn, and is a decent 8-10, I think she's somewhere around the B tier. I definitely think she's somewhere like in the average to below average B tier category in terms of effectiveness. Next up, we've got Holdo, another one which really has just never gotten much in terms of options. The pay one to give essentially a tactical advantage effect for those of you that played from set one draft, to give +2/+2 to a resistance has just not been that good. And then you got a 6 to deploy 3/8. That's only really getting her value if you do get that +2/+2 on another resistance units if you're able to attack with it. Guys, Holdo's a D tier. She's a D tier. I just don't see her doing all that much, especially in a format which has a lot more removal or interaction with the force-based events and all that stuff. And then a set that's really, again, based around force. And then you have this leader that doesn't really support that strategy all that well because you don't have a bunch of resistance force-based units. Guys, she is a D tier option. And Emperor Palpatine's up next. This one has always been pretty good. It's always been, nearing the top of the meta after set one, really. Starting from set two onwards, just having this high value leader at 8 to deploy. I think he's still going to be okay in the new set just because he is that. Honestly, if you're looking for the most value out of your leader, it is Emperor Palpatine. The ability to not only defeat, in essence, a unit from your opponent, but take that unit on your own side of the battlefield is incredible. Now, with set 5, honestly, Palpatine didn't get that much. There hasn't been anything that's super exciting to play with Palpatine. Now, you can play Palpatine Blue and have that controlling strategy, and I think that's the best thing with Palpatine. You get Supremacy Tie, you get Darth Vader Timely, but again, you're kind of competing for the same niche that things like Kira and Krennic are. I do think Palpatine's pretty good, though, and I could see people playing Palpatine Colossus and doing some good stuff. I still think he's an A tier. I just think he is not like a super high A tier as he otherwise would be in other options. I think he's kind of right in the middle with Krennic. Krennic and Palpatine have a similar style of deck typically, but Palpatine a little bit more controlling, and Krennic has a little bit more early game viability with the early deploy. Next up, we got Vader, set 4 Vader. This one has been impressive, guys. Ever since Jango has been banned, this guy has just excelled. Set 4 was absolutely kind to him. And honestly, I think set 5 is going to do some good work for Vader. And the main reason I think Vader is going to be good is not because he's getting a whole lot from set 5, but because of what people are trying to do in set 5 is going to make Vader strong. And that is going with Ground Arena, going with your, upgrade or high value play and trying to get some value with the force and all that stuff. Meanwhile, you're playing more of like an aggro go wide space deck, which is going to have a hard time for your opponents to deal with. This to me is an S tier option. I don't think it's like super high on the S tier comparatively to Kira, but I do think what Darth Vader's trying to do just fits so well against what other lists are trying to do by, attacking with space units, generating more space units, having a pilot for one of your space units, meaning that it can only be defeated by like the rivals fall, etc. That type of effect is going to be just really, really strong. So I think Vader is going to be very, very awesome option in the new set. I think people are going to be pretty impressed with Vader here. Moving on to the next one, we've got Tarkin. Now, Tarkin has always been one that I think has been pretty exciting, but not one that, has actually done a whole lot of work. And I don't know, I just find it exciting to put experience tokens on things and grow them a little bit larger. Honestly, he's competing directly, in my opinion, with another leader on this list at this point because they have a similar effect of putting experience tokens on things and all that good stuff. And we'll talk about that later. I think Tarkin's still pretty good, but the fact that you're limited by Imperial units and you just haven't gotten a crazy amount of additional Imperial units is really tough. Obviously, you still have the old ones, but with the new set, I mean, the cards you're looking at are things like, Grand Inquisitor in aggression, or like the expensive units like Eighth Brother and things like that. I just think Tarkin isn't bad. I think it's like bottom of B tier. But you could argue for like a C tier. We may move him on into the C tier a little bit later on. Piet is next up. Piet's a fun one. I've always enjoyed myself a Piet deck with all the capital ships coming in. Honestly, though, you didn't really get a whole lot from set 5. You did not get, honestly, anything, in my opinion, that is worth running. I know some people talked about like Supremacy, which has been a fun one, but I don't think you should be running Supremacy in your Piet deck. So he didn't get anything, really. So what is he getting? He's getting the fact that the meta is still a mid-range meta and a little bit more of a value-oriented meta. and you're playing a bunch of big, expensive capital ships that you get discounts on. To me, Piet's still like an A tier option. I do think Piet's a decent one and can definitely perform well. Well, maybe actually I'm gonna put him high B tier. I just haven't been as impressed with Piet. I know he's performed. He hasn't performed as well as I was hoping in the set 4 meta. And I don't imagine the meta shifting all that much in set 5. And if that's the case, then a lot of other these decks are getting better options. Take, for example, like Akira getting ECL Vader, which is going to be able to just one-shot one of your big capital ships. Yeah, that's going to be, unfortunately, bad for Piet, even though Piet has done reasonably well in the meta. But again, more like a high B tier option than anything else. Next up, we've got Hondo, one of my pet decks that I still play to this day because I think he's very, very fun, but not one that has gotten much from set 5. The smuggle mechanic obviously was kind of isolated to set 2, so you didn't really get anything that's working with his front side action, but really just trying to get a lot of value from Hondo is hard. Honestly, Hondo, I've got to put him in the D tier again, guy. I've got to start putting him in the D tier. I don't know if I put him in the D tier last time we did one of these lists, but he just hasn't gotten anything. Like, I could play Hondo, or I could play another command villainy leader that got something from set 5, because he is just struggling along with the smuggle mechanic that has literally just not changed whatsoever, because it is isolated to set 2. Especially if you're playing Hondo blue, then you're competing with all the other command vigilance leaders, which is exactly where you don't want to be. And you got the worst side of it, which means you can't play ECL in your deck if you wanted to take use out of Vader. Next up, we got Wedge. Wedge has always been one that I come back to frequently. I don't know if I'm going to post this video before the other video that I just recorded about Wedge, but playing that all space piloting strategy, just getting in for damage and trying to cheese out some wins, is pretty cool. I do think he's a one-track leader, though, and I don't think he's going to function very well in the meta upcoming in terms of what the decks are attempting to do. Or what the decks are automatically playing. It's good in some matchups because you can just go all space and kind of ignore people, but a lot of people are playing force throws, sorceress blasts, open fires, just in general a lot of removal. And unfortunately, even like Chewbacca, which you could play super early with Wedge, still dies to like force throw, discard, an 8-drop or whatever. And that can be really tough to deal with. So Wedge, to me, definitely a C tier option, similar to Leia in my opinion, in that similar to Hondo in my opinion, in that you're gonna be kind of stuck behind because there's no piloting mechanics anymore. But still, just like a one-track option. You can play like a value-oriented Wedge, but you're not gonna win more games by getting a 1 resource discount on a lot of your pilots, or your standard pilots like Luke and Chewbacca, versus just playing a better command heroism leader with the Luke and Chewbacca in your deck already. Next up, we got Padme, guys. What are we doing with Padme? What are we even doing, guys? What are we doing? Like, what was the plan here with Padme? Like, what was the plan? It certainly wasn't to win games, because her leader ability just does not fit at all what you want to be doing in the game. I will say, you did get a lot of Republic units in set 5. Okay, you've got Caloran back, you've got Yoda, 2 of the best ones, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yaddle, Anakin, like all sorts of new Republic units. Do I think it's worth playing Padme for it? I do not think it's worth playing Padme for it. The coordinate fact of it, where you have to have 3 units on the battlefield to even use her ability, and then couple the fact that you have to also pay 1 resource to draw a card, I still don't think it's worth it. That said, I'm going to put her in C tier. And I know this is kind of crazy. I know I just flame Padme a lot. But the fact that we're in a more value-oriented meta, I do think the value of drawing cards has increased quite a bit. And although I disagree that Padme's ability is really that good at all, I do find that because we're able to get super high value targets now, if you're going to play, like, let's say Padme blue, and you're able to play that force-based strategy, and then able to get into the late game and then just constantly use her ability, that would be pretty good. And you can, in some cases, do that by playing Caloran Beck. You're going to generate 2 bodies, and then the restore aspect's going to do something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just hopeful for Padme. I know I've flamed her a lot over the course of time. I'm going to put her in C tier just for those reasons. And I know some of you wanted to see that. Caloran Beck and Yoda are some of the strongest options to pick up from Command Heroism in your Force deck. So the fact that you can grab either one of them with your ability here with Padme is not bad. Okay, it's not bad, and can definitely set you up for late game. And when you do flip her, you're able to, you know, get some value from the attacks and get some drawn cards. So that's pretty cool too. Next up, we've got Hera. Hera, not really getting a whole lot besides Ezra, albeit Ezra is one of the strongest specters in your deck because of the ability to pass around experience tokens. I think Hera is actually not atrocious. I think I put her in like the C tier last time we did this list, and I do think she kind of fits around that category. She doesn't offer a whole lot, though. I do think she's now competing with Kanan for the fact that Kanan also has the option to get some value for Spectre units. The one thing that Hera has over Kanan is that you can run like Hera Red and still play, you know, the Ghost. Whereas Kanan, if you're playing Kanan Red, you're not able to play all of the Cunning or command options, which the command options are nothing really. It's really just the Cunning options that you can play, which isn't that much. Honestly, though, Hera still okay for the fact that you can play all the Spectres in one deck and get a higher concentration. But if you're going to play a Spectre deck, just play Kanan, please. You're going to get a little bit more value from him over the Hera. Next up, we got Obi-Wan. Ooh, Obi-Wan, guys. New Obi-Wan, that is. New Obi-Wan is very interesting. This, to me, is one of the powerhouse leaders alongside Talzin from the new set. I also don't find myself wanting to put him in the S tier quite yet, but I will drop him right behind Talzin. I think Talzin's just a little bit better than Obi-Wan just because of the Villainy card pool, but you get Caloran Beck, you get Yoda, you get Chirrut as a Sentinel, you get the General's Blade Jedi Lightsaber, you get Yaddle, Gunji, which work excellently with Virgin's Temple with Obi-Wan. Or if you want to play Aggression Obi-Wan, you get Force Throws, you get Adi Gallias, you get Kiadi Mundis and Mace Windu's. You got a couple different options with Mace Windu or Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the fact that you can use this Force throughout the game, just get value by giving experience tokens to your units, is actually very, very strong. And sometimes can completely dwarf your opponent's game plan. Super, super powerful leader. And I think you can make an argument for him to be an S tier. But once again, I wouldn't push it super far because you still do have a little bit of trouble up against like Kira's, for example, with their overwhelming barrages and their Vaders coming in and just kind of wiping your board. Moving on to the next one, we've got Captain Rex, one of my favorite leaders to play, to be honest. It's just because the Unity of Purpose makes it a lot of fun. This guy has been able to do some fun things by going super wide and getting a ton of value on the board and then losing because you get overwhelming barrage before you can Unity of Purpose or whatever it is. That said, the Unity of Purpose does squeak out some wins every once in a while and can do some powerful things. It is a one-trick combo deck in most games, but you do have the fail case of just playing good units as you go along and then going wide and rushing your opponent down. It's not quite as like hard punishing as like the Wedges of the world in terms of trying to go for your combo and then failing. So to me, he's like a very low B tier option. Solid, but in terms of combo options, like the combo is very, very tricky to deal with. If you happen to have the right combination of cards, like Command plus the Unity of Purpose really helps you scale into that section of the game really, really quickly. But that's the trick. Do you have that combination of cards? And most of the time, it is a big ol' no. Count Dooku, this one has been a very, very fun one. Really, you got, honestly, a lot of cards from the new set that I am really excited about in Count Dooku. You've got the new Darth Sidious if you're playing the Force strategy. You got the Hive Defense Wing, which is actually not bad at all. And you got the Darth Tyrannus, which I find to be pretty strong. And even the Trident Assault Ship. Basically anything that you can cheat out in Dooku is actually quite good. If you're playing Aggression, you got the Heavy Missile Gunship. But honestly, I still lean towards Count Dooku Vigilance personally, which means you get Darth Sidious, and Darth Tyrannus. And that's pretty cool. That said, he's still pretty weak in general, because you got a 7 deploy leader with a kind of like just it's a decent stat line, I'm not gonna lie, but it's 7 to deploy, and it's really tough to get some value out of him because you're not going to be exploiting 3. Exploit 1 isn't that hard to do, and you can do some cool things, but the main strategies for Count Dooku already existed before set 5 for the most part, and you have to play and alter your deck to have the force to utilize Darth Tyrannus and Darth Sidious, which is still tough to do. So to me, he's like he's a C tier guy. He's a C tier. It is what it is, unfortunately. Wat Tambor, oh boy. Talk about separatist leaders, guys. The old Wat Tambor coming in, defeating getting your units defeated, getting to pump up other units, getting him to flip as a 3/6 and pumping up other units. It's kind of fun. It gets it a lot of damage. Giving +2/+2 to things can do some work. It's not a super late flip, but the 3/6 body is pretty bad in terms of what I'd want out of a leader. Yes, you get the +2/+2 potential, but honestly, this is a leader that I do not have any faith in, especially with all the cheap interaction. I'm actually going to say Wat Tambor should probably go into the D tier category now. Even though you can get some value on your units, the fact that there's Sorceress Blast and Force Throw is super common, and Force Lightning and all this stuff to kill your units, and then the fact that you have units like Yaddle and Gunji in the game where they just have these massive toughness amounts, it's just going to be really tough to do anything in the game when your opponent can kill multiple of your units off. Like, at least before, 4 toughness turn 1 plays were not as common, and nowadays it's even more common than before because the Gunjis, the Yaddles, the Karases of the world and all that stuff. It's going to be really tough to actually win games with Wat Tambor. Next up, we've got Snoke. This is the leader I was referring to earlier when talking about Tarkin. I think Snoke just is better Tarkin in terms of what Tarkin wants to do, which is play units out, get a little bit of extra value on them. The nice thing about Snoke is that you can put things, experience tokens on things like Pike Sentinel or things that just don't have a specific tag, which is really nice. And that gives you a really big dynamic in the game. And then also he's kind of like a one-man powerhouse in that he deploys, and then you can start putting experience tokens on himself. And that's something that Tarkin can never really do. And so because of that, Snoke does have an extra dynamic that Tarkin does not. And for those reasons, I think he's more of an A tier option. I'm going to put him in the kind of mid portion of A tier. I think Snoke is actually decent, very solid of an option. Not quite worthy of like the top of A tier or S tier like Obi-Wan and Talzin, but definitely a high value leader that I think people should definitely give a shot to. Next up, we got Moff Gideon, a leader that works with some of those smaller units out there, but one that I've just been always unimpressed with. So Moff Gideon comes in, he's, got a 3/6 body, deploys for 5. I mean, I guess you get the attack of the unit. If it's attacking another unit, you get extra power. So now you're trading off units, and that's not even going to happen all that often because, again, people are playing so much higher toughness in the meta that even like your Super Laser Technician, which is one of the best cards in my opinion in your previous iterations of Gideon, and now can actually trade with units. This guy's like a C tier option guy. It's a D tier. It's a D tier. I don't see anyone using the Gideon for actual effective value, and the fact that he's a 3/6 that has to get overwhelmed and you have to attack units, and then it becomes a 4. Like, it's just mediocre across the board. Morgan Elspeth, the next one up. This one's interesting. I've tried to make her work. I haven't done a video on her quite yet, but I've tried different combinations. I tried double command Morgan Elspeth with like the Oppo Rancisis or whatever the guy's called, as well as I think Morgan Vigilance is the better option because you get things like Pike Sentinel as an example, in which you can curve into Chilton if you're fortunate enough, which is actually pretty nice. And then you get the option of just playing more cards in your deck that actually have keywords, but those are kind of few and far between. You do have a 5 resource 3/6 flip, which is not great. And then you also have so many actions that you have to take in order to make Morgan work. You not only have to play the unit that shares a keyword, you have to then attack with that unit, and then you have to have that unit survive the attack and survive your opponent's action to then use the action to get a 1 resource discount. That's all we're getting from this. To me, Morgan Elspeth is more of like a C tier option. I think there's some powerful things you can do with Morgan, but it's just like there's so many hoops you have to jump through in order for her to function. It's similar to actually the next one on our list in Jabba, where there's so many actions you have to take to where he gets so much weaker, and Morgan gets so much weaker. Jabba puts bounties on things, and there's not many things that synergize with bounties because, again, it is a locked set to mechanic at this point. There is no additional cards that have come from the future sets that work really well with Jabba. And the fact that you have to, again, similar to Morgan, use the action, then make your turn, potentially kill that unit to get the value out of it. And then you have the flip, which honestly is not that great anymore with the change in the meta, to where even if you capture a unit under a big heavy hitter, you got things like Shatterpoint now that are super common. They're just going to wipe out that unit, and you're going to be stuck with, you know, your opponent having that unit back. So Jabba, I do think has actually gotten worse over time, and is probably just a middle of the pack C tier leader, but probably on the lower end of things, to be honest. Boba Fett, you guys just saw a video with this with the keyword tribal. I do think he is not bad. You do get a couple of cards from the new set. If you're not playing double green Boba, which I don't actually think you should be doing, but rather if you're playing things like, you know, Boba Blue, which I think is actually kind of interesting because you get like Axe Woves, you get like Secretive Sage and Sheer, which have keywords, and then you can kind of use some upgrades that you could utilize. You just got a couple of different options, but I do think Boba has always been not like exceptionally powerful. You do get things like Caloran back and Yoda if you want to go the Force strategy, but if you're doing that, it's probably not something you're going to get a whole lot of value over other options that you have. Boba Fett, kind of middle of the pack, to the lower end of B tier, in my opinion. You do have some powerful things you can do, and you can be a very aggressive deck, and that's something that is pretty nice because you can just kind of load up on some keyword units and just go to town. Things like Modded Cohort still work absolutely amazingly in the deck, which is nice, and I mean, you can get some wins for sure. Lastly, in the command category, Hunter. So I put Padme in the C tier category at the very bottom because I said drawing cards is a little bit better. You know whose drawing card ability is the absolute worst I've ever seen in probably any game ever? Hunter's. Hunter's ability to draw cards is the absolute worst I have ever seen. The hoops you have to jump through for this guy is obnoxious. The fact that you have to resource that unique unit, and then play that unique unit on the board, and then you return that resource back to just then put another card for the top deck and other resource and pay one to do all that is so obnoxious. Again, you have to have a unit that shares a name with another unit. That's tricky to do, especially in the new meta, with the cards kind of being all over the place. You're not really playing a lot of duplicates of named cards. It's a D tier, guys. The 7 deploy as well is also hindering it. At least Padme comes down on 5 with Restore 1. Like, you got something there. Hunter's D tier guy. He is the worst leader in Star Wars Limited and has been since he's been released, in my opinion. He is obnoxiously bad. With all that said, we get to move on to the aggression category, starting us off with an old classic in Darth Vader from set 1. This one has actually been pretty good. Honestly, I've been pretty impressed with what you can do with Darth Vader. I do think you can go more force based and utilize force through and force lightning as well. And you can even go like Darth Vader blue and play a more mid-range style. I do think Darth Vader green is the place to go. You do get things like Grand Inquisitor, which is nice, and you do get a couple of cards from the new set that I do think fit well. But also the bigger thing with Darth Vader is that he's kind of just a value leader in that when you deploy, he is going to kind of take over the board, assuming you let him attack. The 5/8 body isn't horrible. It's decent. Even Hunter is a 5/8 body, but he's not offering that amazing attack trigger of dealing 2 damage to units, which is nice. And Vader has that force tag, which is pretty good. I don't think he's anything special. To me, he's very comparable to like what Luke is trying to do, somewhere around like that B tier category. Honestly, I think he's probably worse than Avar, but Darth Vader, he's not bad. Definitely can get some value going. Bosk, one of the leaders that has been pretty good and a pretty big staple. Another one that is kind of locked in with the set 2 mechanic of bounties. However, the bounties that you have available for Bosk actually get better with time, because the bounties that you're utilizing are putting bounties on opponents' units and claiming them, which are Bounty Hunter's Quarry, Price on Your Head, those types of effects, and even Deathmark, which draws you cards, which we know how strong that has been becoming. And the fact that you're getting more cards that synergize with them, or more opportunities to ramp to get in the late game. I don't think Bosk specifically synergizes with the set 5 cards in most ways, but he's not bad at all. I definitely think he definitely kind of ends up in that B tier range in most situations. Again, if you were to compare this to set 4, I mean, Bosk did do decently well in set 4 with Data Vault, but nothing too special about Bosk, really. So I do think he's kind of like that middle of the pack B tier leader. Cassian, oh boy, everyone loves their Cassians, huh? Oh, Cassian. We talked about drawing cards being pretty good. The unfortunate part is Cassian tends to be a little bit more of an aggressive leader. And if you're playing a force-based strategy, you just got so many better options. And Cassian didn't really get anything from set 5 if you're not going with that force-based strategy. The Kiadi-Mundis, the Mace Windus, the Vernestras, if you're going yellow Cassian, the Youngling Padawans, like those types of cards just don't really fit in what Cassian was doing already. You'd have to modify your entire deck to try to utilize the force-based mechanics. And again, the things that you're doing with those force-based decks, like drawing extra cards to Kiadi-Mundi, don't really fit in what Cassian's trying to do. To be honest, to me, it's a D tier. It's a D tier, guys. It is a D tier. It's not that great. The 4/6 deploy on 6 just doesn't do enough alongside a lot of other things going on to really make you want to be playing Cassian. Next up, we got IG-88. Another set 1 classic. The 5/4 body coming to haunt people on 5 to deploy. Honestly, this card, in my opinion, is just so much worse now that we've gotten the new Third Sister, because the Third Sister, which we'll talk about in just a moment, and you know what? I'll put IG in the D tier, and I'll put Third Sister in the like B tier range, because I do think that's where they fit. IG-88, same stat line as Third Sister, obviously gets you a little bit more aggressive firepower by flooding the board if you can, but it's not enough to warrant losing Third Sister's action, which is the ability to hide your units so they don't die immediately when they come down. They work kind of similar in that they have the same aggressive stat line, similar kind of strategy alongside it, but the Third Sister also allows you to deploy and then not get one shot by another unit, like a K2SO or a Kanan or whatever it is, like IG-88 does. It is so much better with Third Sister, and the fact that you don't just die immediately, and you got the force synergy by having a 5 to deploy force unit, which IG-88 does not. I just felt like we had to compare them both because they're so similar in terms of the game plans that they're trying to run. Next up, we've got Darth Maul. This is one that it's been growing on me. It's been growing on me, especially with the Virgin's Temple kind of strategy. There's a lot of different ways you can play Maul, to be honest. I've seen double red Mauls, I've seen double Maul greens, but I think Maul blue is where you want to be. You got things like Ogdo Bogdo, which work really well. But honestly, the thing that I think has been most impressive is there's a lot of situations where you can kind of just play these value units and then just relying on your units and then dealing a couple damage to each of their units every single turn alongside some damage-based events has been pretty good. I do think he's somewhere around like the more value-oriented B tier category, just because you can put a little bit more pressure on your opponent to have to interact with you. And then when you do deploy him, a 6 deploy 5/6, not the greatest, as I said with like Ahsoka, because it is squishier, but the fact that you could deal more damage, like you could do a turn where you deal 1 damage to an enemy unit, another damage to another unit on their side of the battlefield, flip Maul, and then attack and do another 2 damage, just 2 other units. That's actually conducive to potentially clearing out the board, which is pretty nice. And if you put a Fallen Lightsaber on Maul, suddenly you're dealing 2 damage to a ground unit and then 1 damage to another unit, which is incredible in terms of wiping out the board every single round. Grand Inquisitor. Oh boy, guys, Grand Inquisitor. Honestly, Grand Inquisitor's gotten a lot better. Honestly. And I don't even think it's like a meme strategy to be playing Grand Inquisitor in this day and age. I'm going to put the hot take, and maybe people are going to complain about this, but put him in the A tier category. You've got so many new additions with Grand Inquisitor, guys, and Tarkin Town is not a commonly played deck. or a base. If it was more commonly played, I think I would drop Grand Inquisitor a little bit lower, because I do think Target Town is something you really got to be good at Grand Inquisitor to play around. You've got the new Grand Inquisitor, which is the 3/4 raid 1. You've got Force Throw and Force Lightning, which works so well with the cards that you're already trying to play. You've got either Grand Inquisitor Cunning or Grand Inquisitor Vigilance with multiple different options. If you're going to go Inquisitor or Vigilance, you can play the Force strategy with Karis and Darth Tyrannus. You could still play Cunning with the Force synergies and just play amazing units as you go along. You got Scimitar, which is one of the best units I have ever seen for Grand Inquisitor. The absolute menace that is the 3/4, becoming an immediately readied up 6/2 space unit, just catches people so off guard. You got the new Thralls of the Coven, which is just another toughness clan challengers, which you were using before. So many new additions for Grand Inquisitor that I actually think he's just gotten a little bit better. Every single set, just a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. Similar to Gar Saxon for me, although I think Gar Saxon is just a little bit more consistent. Major Von Reg, one that has been kind of sneaking up here and there for set 4, but has never done all that fantastically. Nice early deploy, which can be very scary for some decks. And I honestly think that's something that really advantages Major Von Reg, and one of the things that I am going to put a lot of stock into. Because again, space has been tough to deal with for a lot of decks, especially if you could pilot up something, and Major Von Reg can. So I do think he actually has a very aggressive niche spot. And for that, I'm going to put him kind of in the same category as Third Sister, but attacking on 2 different angles. Third Sister, very much force base, getting the force value. Von Reg doing the absolute opposite, ignoring all force synergies, going mostly into space, and then just kind of trying to cheese out your opponent with an early deploy. That's what Von Reg's trying to do. And I do think he actually does it quite well. And it is very, very aggressive and very scary. Talk about aggressive decks, Kylo Ren. This has been pretty good. And playing a very aggressive strategy is pretty exciting, and you do get a lot from set 5. I think Battle Fury is one of those cards that is very, very scary to come up against. You also got the new Grand Inquisitor, which is really, really nice. And honestly, I think the aggressive game plan of Kylo is pretty good. That said, if you come up against the wrong deck, again, there's a lot of early game interactions, or you're fighting against Talzin or Kira, it's going to be tough. It is going to be very, very tough. So to me, he's like one of those leaders that still remains one of the best aggro leaders in the game, because again, you just catch people off guard. If you get a Kylo Ren deploy and you slap Battle Fury on him, and then you're sitting there with a 11 10 Kylo Ren, it's obnoxious. It is obnoxious, and it ends the game super quickly. And then you put Fallen Lightsaber on him. You just got more options. Even Constructed Lightsaber is really good. Upgrades on a really early deploy leader have been strong. It's similar to like Sabine when she was top of the game. It is just a good thing to do. It's not like he's exceptional. He does kind of have a one-track game plan, but I do think he's one of the better aggro decks in the meta as an option. Poe Dameron, talk about deploying space and kind of going all in on that strategy. Poe Dameron with a 1 to deploy as a pilot on some options. I don't think Poe Dameron's bad by any means, but you do get some kind of awkward games depending on how you deploy Poe Dameron in the early game. I do think the space game plan is pretty good to go with the older leaders that are not getting a whole lot from set 5. And Poe Dameron is one of those leaders. But fortunately for him, he is one that wants to lean towards space anyways, so I do think he's kind of got a good out. That said, I think he kind of ends up somewhere similar to the bottom of B tier. He just hasn't been all that exceptional. The eject combo hasn't been that great to kind of combo with him. He's just kind of been average. Kit Fisto. I don't know, guys. Maybe people have seen some Kit Fisto do some work. I have not been one of those individuals, and I do not think the game plan of running a bunch of Jedi units is a solid one. To me, this guy is a D tier leader. He's not below these two. I'll put him at the top of D tier. There's some Jedi units. They're not bad at all. Okay, you can play Aggression Command or Aggression Vigilance, and you can play Yaddle and Adi Gallia. But you know who could also do that and play Aggression Vigilance? You could play Luke Skywalker. You could play Ahsoka Tano. You could play any Aggression Vigilance option with force-based strategies and be better, or Aggression Command. Obi-Wan, Kanan, Rey. I mean, there's just so many options that allows you to go with that game plan. And even if you're able to play a bunch of Jedi and do the force thing, You need 2 other Jedi to make him a 3/6 Saboteur. What? 2 other units on the board and your payoff is a 3/6? That's not even good on a good day. 4/6 would be solid, and that's not even a payoff. That's just a solid leader. The better thing about him is the 1 pay to deal 2 to something, but again, you need to play Jedi every single point of the curve, and that can be a little bit tricky in some cases. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't put you as harsh on him, because the 2 damage is actually something that I do find to be reasonably powerful, and because of that, guys, I won't put him in the D tier. I just, the 1/6, what were they thinking, guys? What are they doing to our Kit Fisto? Like, I know +1/+0 for every single unit you deploy is like scary, but you could have at least made him a 2/6. Like 2 units when you deploy a leader is not that unlikely. We've seen it with Quinlan and like Plo Koon coming down. Okay, I get it. But that's a 4/6, and on a good day you get a 5/6. That should be your payoff, okay? Not a 1/6 that becomes a 3/6. All right. Anyways, Bo-Katan. What did you get with Bo-Katan in the new set? You got Axe Woes, which is actually an incredible unit. That's about it, though. You don't really get anything else from the new set. You got a bunch of old units to utilize. I do think Axe is actually pretty good, and I do think dealing a damage after attacking with a Mandalorian unit has actually been a pretty powerful ability. Just being able to deal 1 damage, deal 1 damage, deal 1 damage is pretty strong, but outside of that, you're not really getting anything from set 5. Axe is the only thing that you're really offering to the deck, and that's not necessarily good enough to bring it above kind of the bottom of B tier, in my opinion. It is more consistent, which is why I'm putting it above Captain Rex, but doesn't have the same power level of Captain Rex in the changes that are in the times where you can get the Captain Rex combo off. But I'd rather have that consistency. You also get to play things like Disabling Fangfighter main deck, which is really nice because it is Mandalorian, and then synergize with your ability, which Upgrade Hate in main deck is actually pretty good these days. Okay, next up, we've got a good one. We've got Han Solo, baby. Back in set 2, Han. He is a good one. He is a good one. Guys, this is an S tier leader. You've got so many options. Talk about aggression-based force decks, like with Kit Fisto. Han's got 2 options. You got Han Green and Han Blue. And guess what? The cards that you get with the new set are absolutely fantastic. Grogu, disgustingly good in Han. You've got Ogdo Bogdo on turn 1 as well with Han Blue. In Han Green, you got like Obi-Wan curving into Kiadi-Mundis and Mace Windu's, which come down a turn earlier to get your force payoffs in. And you can top your curve off with the Yodas and Kelleran Becks, which are amazing. Again, going back to Vigilance, though, you got an amazing early game spread of, playing things like Shatterpoint and Ogdo Bogdo and some of the other force-based options. It is an exceptional powerhouse. I think Han Command has been a little bit better than Han Vigilance for me, but both are honestly arguable S tier options. And that makes Han an S tier list, in my opinion. I think you could argue that he should be above Kira, but I'm going to put him in the S tier. I still think the consistency of Kira and what you're able to provide with the Kira flip and just having that Vigilance base or a Villainy base of Vigilance Command is still good. So I'm going to put him behind Kira, but Han is absolutely fantastic. Next up, we got Boba Fett, indirect damage dealer, something that we haven't gotten more additional cards for because it was a set 4 mechanic. This one, it can do some cool things with Data Vault. I don't think it's all that impressive. Did perform decently well. After the suspension, you did have a couple of Boba Fett Data Vaults coming in with some value plays, which did do some good work. That's nothing to complain about. I do think it kind of fits somewhere in the A tier category. I think I'm going to put him at the bottom of A tier just because there isn't really all that much that you're getting with the new set. You're not really getting a whole lot of vehicles that I'm excited about. The indirect damage theme of Boba Fett isn't all there with the set 5. You can play like heavy missile gunship and trigger Boba Fett's ability that way, but that's not really what you want to be doing. Next up, we got Sabine Wren, another old classic. This has been in the top echelons of the meta from day 1, and honestly, I gotta put her back at the top of the meta. I don't really see a spot where Sabine is just not going to be a solid option. Sabine's still one of the biggest contenders from set 4, and I don't think anything's really going to change. Like, we're not really getting a whole lot from the new set for her. Like, you could play Gunji or Obi-Wan or anything like that if you wanted to, but honestly, Sabine is probably going to do her same thing, which is play that kind of like rebel synergy package, and just be an aggressive contender in the meta. You do get some options to play some potentially forced package if you want, and play the data vault game plan. But honestly, I just think going more into the game plan of, hey, I'm the aggressor, I'm gonna aggress, that is just going to be good enough in a lot of situations with ECL. I still think she's an S tier option. She still performs absolutely exceptionally. And you don't even need new additions. And we saw this with set 2. When we got set 3, there really wasn't all that many additions that you wanted to add. And most people were just playing with the same set 1 and set 2 deck. And this deck, or this meta, is going to be very similar. Like, the new force cards don't really benefit her. Like, the ECL target that I'd be thinking about is like a Saj, but you're not playing enough force units to make a Saj worth it. Quinlan could be an option, but again, do I want to be playing that as my 4-drop over something like a K2SO? Do I want to be playing Adi Galea in the deck? Maybe. Can I play Force Throw? Maybe. Do I want to make that deck more inconsistent? Probably not. You also have the Data Vault Sabine, which has been a fun one, and I do think if you're going to go that direction, you get Kellerin back, and you can play a Force Synergy based deck there, which could be pretty nice. But again, I think she's still just going to be solid. Ray. Oh boy. Ray. Playing non-unit force cards, huh? And we deal 1 to things. She is a 6/8, which is better than the 5/8, so a little bit above average in terms of having a leader deploy. Honestly, the 1 damage when you play non-unit event force card or non-unit force cards is really going to be unlikely to happen. I think Vigilance is going to be the most likely option, and you just don't have that many options to play. Like, you could play like Calm in the Storm, for example, is one of the options I was thinking about, but just dealing the 1 damage is really not that much value. And the fact that you're playing non-unit force cards, and then a lot of your force cards that you want to be playing, like Force Throw, as an example, or even like Sorceress Blast, which you'd want to be playing, don't really function unless you already have a force unit on the board to generate the force for you if you're playing the common force space, or just to play any unit on the board to generate the force in the first place as well. So because of that, I don't really see the synergy with Ray, and I gotta put her in like the bottom of C tier. I do not think this leader is very good at all. The 1 damage isn't horrible, but yeah, I just don't really see how you're gonna get a ton of value out of Ray to make the combination of cards that you're playing worth it. And then the fact that if you're going to be playing aggression, heroism, you're going to have Kiadi Mundi, you're going to be drawing a lot of cards oftentimes, and then the refill hand is just not going to do enough. It's just not going to do enough. Captain Phasma. Guys, we got a couple new first order cards in the meta. We got Exegol Patroller, we got Knight of Ren, we got a couple good ones. Captain Phasma was never that great, but we did get a couple of good first order cards, which have made her at least a little bit more playable. She's in that same realm to me as like the Leias and the Wedges. It's crazy putting Captain Phasma in the same category as Leia. But if you're playing like, let's say you're playing Leia Red and you're playing like Tarkin Town, you could be playing Phasma ECL, and you do get the Phasma unit ECL, which is very powerful. You do get the Exegol Patrol, which is a nice turn 1 play. You do get Knight of Ren, which is a nice turn 2 play. And you do have a couple of options to do some work. And I do think the leader flip for Phasma has always been pretty good. Being able to deal 1 to a unit and deal 1 to a base has been pretty good in general. So that's never been a problem for me. It's really just the overall curve of it. So Phasma has better ability on the leader side and the unit side. And then like Leia has the better curve. So they're kind of in the same game plan. Very aggressive nature decks and trying to get in a lot of damage. Luke. Set 4 Luke, very much a mid-range style of game plan, getting to that Luke deploy on a unit and then just kind of going to town with a bunch of damage on your opponent's units is actually pretty good. The problem with that is, again, it doesn't benefit all that well from the new set. You're not going to be playing a force-based synergy deck and then trying to deploy units on vehicle units and have great success with that, because that's like 2 separate game plans. Luke has been pretty good though, and in general has really just had a lot of mid-range value. So because of that, I do think he kind of fits somewhere in the B tier category. And I think he kind of is in a similar spot as like Darth Vader, actually, where you kind of get this late to deploy value oriented leader. You have a lot of value in just playing a bunch of vehicles and then dealing damage to opponents' units. I've seen people play like double red Luke and then rush with space. That can be something that's nice and valuable, but I've also seen like Luke green and do some valuable things there. I do think there's a lot of value to be had with Luke. That said, you still suffer a lot against the more controlling decks. Oh my gosh, like Vader, it just ruins your day. It just ruins your day. New Vader, that is. Maul, back from set 2, guys. I've confused this guy a couple of times for some other, for the new Maul, but we've got a 5 deploy 6/6 leader, huh? Pretty cool there. What are we doing with him? Honestly, not all that much. Giving units overwhelm has never been that powerful. I mentioned this back when he was revealed, and he just hasn't really done all that work with that. A 6/6 on 6 isn't bad, but to be honest, you're not getting anything else but a 6/6 overwhelm, and that's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. I do not think this guy is good at all. I think his leader flip is the only thing not putting him in D tier, and for that I'm going to put him at the bottom of C tier. His action to give overwhelm to things is again not relevant in almost every single situation for most matchups. And then the 6/6 deploy is the only thing redeeming him. He is a better deploy than like the other Darth Maul, because the other Darth Maul is a 5/6 in terms of stat line. But then as soon as you attack with that other Darth Maul, you are way happier with that Darth Maul than this Maul. So anyways, Pre-Vizsla, kind of an interesting one with drawing cards. The action has actually gotten a little bit more valuable because there's a lot more ways to draw cards in the game. And then you get a 4/6 flip on 5. Honestly, though, this guy's never really made the mark. I do think, dealing damage with an action, if it was Heroism, maybe he'd be a little bit better, like higher C tier. But I honestly think this guy should be a D tier option. I do not really find him to be all that powerful. To me, he's kind of in that same tier as like a Finn or Rose Tico, where you got the 4/6 deploy, but even though his ability is better now that you can draw cards, it wasn't good to begin with, and you didn't really get that many options from set 5 to actually synergize with this ability. So to me, still pretty trash. Ahsoka Tano. This one, actually, we got a lot of units that could survive the earlier plays with higher toughness amounts. And Ahsoka herself is a force unit. There are some force synergies that she could benefit from. The coordinate thing is getting better just because there's other options to deploy units in mass amounts. And as I said, a lot of units can survive the earlier stages of the game a little bit better. Has she ever been that great? No, she's been solid in some cases as a 5/6 to deploy for 5. That would be incredible, but it's not always super consistent. To me, she's like a B tier option. She's kind of on the lower end. I would actually put her lower than Bo-Katan and Captain. I think literally at the bottom of B tier is kind of where I would slot her at the current moment. So kind of just an option to play with. Anakin Skywalker, guys. This one has been pretty impressive. Force space strategy with Anakin. Honestly, look at Han and what you're trying to do with Han, and then literally just copy the same deck and put it for Anakin in most situations. That's good. You're going to be playing with Anakin. The nicer thing about Anakin is that you can use your early game units to put on pressure to your opponents putting on pressure to your opponent's units by getting the 2 damage. But the better thing that Anakin has that Han doesn't have is that the leader deploy is actually a threat. So Han gets an extra curve or extra resource for the curve, and then Anakin gets an actual threat as a leader. And that can be pretty good in some cases. I think it's like somewhere around the top of A tier. I'm going to put it below Obi-Wan and Talzin because I'm not going to break them in the S tier, but I don't think Anakin's quite the S tier level that these ones are. But I do think he's top of the list in terms of A tier. He is a high A tier option and does do some really great work with some of the force synergies in the game right now. Mace Windu, dealing damage to damaged units. Pretty interesting stuff. I've seen, a couple options, Mace Windu Blue and Mace Windu Red, where they're playing the force synergies and trying to use the damage-based removal options like Force Throw, Sorceress Blast. It actually works well with Mace Windu. Honestly, we saw some controlling decks that were pretty okay in Mace Windu previously. I don't think he's getting all that much, and I think a lot of decks are going to prefer to go other directions, and his value here isn't all that great. because the one resource to pay is definitely a downside to where some other decks in like aggression, vigilance, force space is just going to do a little bit better. But I don't think he's bad. Honestly, I think he's like bottom of B tier. I think you do some good work with him with the damage based removal and kind of keep pace with your opponent, and that's not bad at all. That's going to wrap up our aggression, guys. We have a pretty evenly split list right now, but we got to move on to Cunning as our final aspect, and then we'll slide in the last two here in Anakin and Revan. Starting off with Asajj Ventress. This one's been pretty fun. I've gone with a couple different options here. I've gone like Asajj Blue. I've gone Asajj Red with like Sorceress Blast, Force Throw, Force Based with 3 damage, Force Space. As I said, Asajj Blue with Darth Malik can be pretty cool with Always 2. Darth Malik in general is a pretty good card in Asajj. She's gotten a couple cool tools, and I do think she's gotten a little bit better as well. She's kind of a one-trick leader, though, and similar to like Captain Rex, there's some situations where like there are some combo turns where you could do some absurd things, and then in some games it just kind of devolves into kind of an inconsistent mess that maybe you squeak out a win. So both the Captain Rex and Asajj, I got to put above Ahsoka because her power level just isn't that high. But Asajj and Captain Rex, they could do some really fun things and some really cool things, but overall not that powerful. General Grievous is the next one up. This one working with the droids in the world. Did we get all that many droids? No. With the new set, we did not get all that many droids. A lot of them are actually in the heroism side of things, but you did get HK-47, which is the one that I'm most excited about for Grievous. That said, I don't even think I would be playing Grievous Aggression, so I don't even think you're going to be wanting to play that in your deck. Grievous has never been that great, and a 4/8 deploy just isn't good enough. It's just not good enough on 6, even though you can do some reasonable things. You can't even give him Self-Sentinel, so you need to have another droid on the battlefield. He's a C tier, guys. He is a C tier. He's just not that fantastic whatsoever. Chancellor Palpatine has been one that I have yet to do a video on, but I've been very excited about it. Honestly, the thing that Chancellor Palpatine got from set 5, the main considerating factor is Anakin. Obviously, you get some other things, like if you're playing Heroism, you could still play Yaddle on turn 1. But the thing that I'm most excited about with Palpatine is 100% Anakin. And Anakin is so powerful that he carries Palpatine on his own some games. You still don't get a flip from Palpatine, which is really, really devastating. So he is by far not above B tier, but I do think Anakin raises him a little bit higher than otherwise he would have been before. I'll put him in the middle of B tier. Guys, Anakin is so incredibly strong because you get the double triggers of -3/-3. You can absolutely wreck a board, and that is what you want to be doing. And then just playing that control game and then using the win from Vigilance Villainy cards is just still good. You get to draw so many cards in the deck that you're usually going to get the cards that you want as another consideration. Next up, we got Quinlan. Quinlan from the set 4 days, guys. Quinlan was an exceptional contender. And honestly, Quinlan did get a good amount of things. You can go with the force-based option, but honestly, there's just a couple of good cards that I would be playing, period. In Quinlan, I haven't really found that going away from Tarkin Town has been the game plan that I want to go with. I still view Quinlan as a Tarkin Town game plan, but you still have like Adi Gallia that you can play in the deck. You could be playing Adi Gallia just as a straight up 2/4, nice early force body, which isn't bad. You could be playing things like Jedi in Hiding and Mace Windu and go the force strategy. But again, I don't think that's necessarily what you want to be doing. Asajj Ventress is a great turn for play, giving Quinlan a big power bump. You could even play the new Quinlan to just play with Surprise Strike and things like that. In terms of the cunning side of things, you got things like Qui-Gon or Depa Billaba that you could be playing in the deck. And as I said, you still have options to go the full force game plan. I think Quinlan was strong enough just to reach the S tier in of himself. Like, even if nothing really changed, I think Quinlan's still strong enough to contend in the meta as an S tier list. Maybe gonna drop into A tier. I think you could make an argument that Quinlan's actually worse than Talzin and Obi-Wan. He didn't actually get that much unless you're going into the force-based strategy. And if you are, you're gonna lose Tarkin Town. That is something to consider. But you do get Kiadi Mundi, as I said, Mace Windu. You can get a lot of different options if you continue with the aggression cunning Quinlan that you were seeing before. Dr. Aphra, guys, control decks have gotten worse and worse in my opinion, and you're not getting a whole lot of value from Aphra here. Yes, you get to draw some cards, but so many decks are able to draw cards to a good portion, and the Cunning Vigilance game plan is just not as strong. I don't think she's D tier because I do think she has this very, very specific niche spot, but she's definitely lower on the list. I'm gonna put her above Kit Fista because I can't put her below my Kit Fista. Can't do it. But she's definitely lower on the list. Just nothing to do with the discard pile that has been really all that valuable. Trench, getting some value from drawing some extra cards with hopefully multiple deploys from Trench during a game, just has not happened, okay? I know some people have claimed that they've been able to do it, but honestly, this guy's just been pretty weak overall. You have to get to 6 resources before you can even start doing that. And then once you start doing it, it costs you 3 resources to deploy your leader to draw a card. That is very, very costly. I do not think Trench is very good at all. I gotta put him in the C tier. I actually think he's like on the same level as like Dr. Aphra, but actually just a little bit weaker. Rio Durant, another card that has not gotten much, really focusing on the space strategy, pumping up some vehicle units and getting in some damage that way. My only showcase as of right now. Definitely not one that I think is very good at all. I do think he's more of a C tier leader. He does have that unique aspect of really pumping up those space units and getting in for a lot of damage, especially if you're piloting. Can be a very aggressive strategy. Whoops, I grabbed Aphra, not Rio. I think he's somewhere around like the middle of the pack C tier options. Fennec Shand, we've got some ambushing going on here. Honestly, guys, again, she is one that was running Tarkin Town, and very similar to Quinlan, you'd have to change your entire makeup of the deck in order for Fennec to really function. Honestly, the thing that I thought was most exciting about her was the fact that you could kind of go a little bit more aggressive and utilize some pretty powerful units in previous iterations, but immediately. One of the cards that I thought Fennec was actually really good with was like Marin from the new set. You can go force space and kind of utilize that. I've even seen some people utilize like the infused brawler with the forced base Fennec option, but again, you have to go into the force section of the game in order to modify your entire deck to utilize it, and I don't think that's what Fennec wants to be doing. I think Fennec got a little bit worse in this set. I do think she is interesting and she does have a niche effect of giving those units ambush, but I don't think that's been very, very powerful in the new set. Admiral Akbar, this has come up and been one of the more surprising ones from set 4 in my opinion. Data Vault is the way to go with a little bit of value going across the board. Just keep making those X-Wings tokens, exhaust your opponent's units, get the value from them, and then you go to town with like a clone combat squadron. You can end the game like that, absolutely. However, your opponent has a lot of cheap interaction and can probably mess with your strategy and just win the game and draw a bunch of cards and heal up with the Yodas and things like that. I think Admiral Akbar is still an option, but realistically, guys, he won 2 of the wins here in the set 4s, and in terms of like top 8ing, like he's definitely low on the list in terms of options from the top, like 0.4%. If you're gonna put him in like A tier, you'd have to also put a lot of these other decks like Vader in the A tier, like this Vader in the A tier. So I do think Admiral Akbar is not C tier, but he's somewhere around the middle of the pack B tier option, which is very good for Admiral Akbar. Very, very impressive. Next up, we've got Han Solo, but this one from the set 4 version, the piloting option. Able to reset some of your resources and get a little bit of value as you go along the game. This one has never really performed all that fantastically. You had a lot of people trying to utilize them, like myself, to just reset all your resources and get like 5 resource back on the flip turn, which has always been something that is powerful. Getting resources back is powerful. That said, he never had enough legs to really put up any results, and I don't think he's getting all that much from the new set. If you're looking for like odd cost, cheap plays in the early game, Han just doesn't really have that many. Again, it's more force-based options. So to me, he's like, that C tier. He's at the higher end because he never was like horrible, but nothing really stands out to me about Han so far. Kazuda's been actually pretty good in the meta right now, especially because he's an early deploy pilot. Similar to Major Von Reg, Kazuda has that strength where you deploy an early pilot, your opponent has very few ways to deal with it. But now Kazuda also has enough to run Kazuda Blue and run like Ogdo Bogdo and Corporate Defense Shuttle, which are all very, very strong plays, very obnoxious to deal with. And honestly, I think that's enough. You could even continue on with the Kazuda aggression game plan with the trench runs and things like that. I think he's like an A tier option. I'm going to put him in the A tier as an aggressive option on the very, very end of it, because I do think he's a kind of a one trick option, but does it really, really, really well and early enough to where your opponent can't actually respond to it. Like if you just think like, okay, I go Corporate Defense Shuttle, got a 3-5, get to attack for 3 on the following turn. Your opponent's not going to have many ways to deal with that unless they're like Power of the Dark Siding. Into, I don't know, a Millennium Falcon, the new one, into Kazuda deploying a Millennium Falcon. I mean, what unit or what removal can your opponent have to deal with it? Like they could again force throw it, but they'd have to discard a 7-drop, which isn't super common, especially against Kazuda, because you would have resourced it early game unless you had that plan initially. And other than that, I mean, you gotta like wait till rivals fall, which is gonna be really tough to deal with. Of course, if you're like a Power of the Dark Side deck, this definitely can be a little bit tricky for Kazuda. That said, I still think he does it quite well. Thrawn! Oh my gosh, some people have been playing the double yellow Thrawn, and they are trying so hard to make Zuckuss work, but I do not think it is good at all. It is pretty fun, but the controlling aspect of Thrawn has definitely gotten weaker. The aggro aspect of Thrawn has gotten stronger, but I don't think he was a good aggro leader to begin with. Very late to deploy, exhausting, isn't really conducive to a successful game plan. I'm going to put him in the C tier, kind of on the same level as like a lot of these leaders down here, where they have somewhat of a useful ability in very, very niche spots. Han Solo. This one's been an interesting one. I have seen very, very few set 1 Han Solos at this point in the meta. It is a deck that I think has gotten very few cards from the new set. Like, yes, you could do the Keller and Beck thing. Yes, you could play Keller and Beck in, and it's a good card. But that's really the only thing that I've found to be very good in Han from the new set. You don't really want to be playing a force-based deck with the outside of Mystic Monastery. That is the only situation where I've seen Han be playing some of the new force cards. And to be honest, those have been reasonable. Like, you can play Yoda in that. You can play Vernestra if you wanted. You can play some of those options. And it's not bad by any means. But I'm actually going to be putting Han like A tier, and not even at like the top of A tier, which is crazy because Han has been always at the top of my lists. And maybe this is just cope because I don't want to see Han anymore. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. I like actually playing Han. So I don't know. Maybe I got a subconscious bias or something like that. But I just don't think Han has really gotten a whole lot from the new set. I'd be very curious to see if someone has a list that really utilizes the full strength of Han from the new set. Jin, guys, Jin, the -1/-0 is not good at all. That is really all you're getting, the ability to attack other units and get the -1/-0. Honestly, that has not been very, very powerful of an action. The fact that you have to actively attack your opponent with that action in order for you to get that value is just not that good. And there's just so many other things to do with your game plan. And then you have a 6 to deploy 4/7, which honestly just is not that powerful unless you're actually trading with other units. And again, you're playing in the Cunning deck, which is usually not something that wants to be trading off units and stalling out the game to the late game. This to me is definitely a D tier option. Mandalorian is next up, and we did not get a whole lot for Mandalorian. Set 4 got a whole bunch of cards for Mandalorian because you had the pilots, and those were pretty good. And I do think the pilots are still pretty good, but there's so many interaction events in this new set that are way more viable than they were before. And the one thing that absolutely destroys your game plan as Mandalorian is opponents not relying on their units to attack and instead relying on their powerful events to 2-for-1 you. I think in the meta this time, Mandalorian has gotten a lot weaker, and he is definitely in the C tier category with a lot of these other cards. Next up, we've got Cad Bane. Guys, Cad Bane, classic Tarkentown user, absolutely fantastic. Did get a couple of cards, some of the Underworld cards. I've seen people try out like Aura Singh, Martian Row for the extra raid from Cad Bane, a couple of options like that. I just think in general, what you're trying to do with Cad Bane is an S tier option. I think this card's actually, or this leader is actually very, very solid. And I think a lot of decks that are trying to rely on the force-based game plan are going to get disrupted by Cad Bane quite nicely. It also works pretty well against Han Solo, which is nice. Although it doesn't necessarily kill Grogu on turn 1 unless you have an Underworld card to play with it, but you most likely will, so it'll probably kill Grogu. But Cad Bane, absolutely a stunning leader, has been for quite some time now, and I think he's just going to be still one of the better ones. Cad Bane Red, you can also be playing Cad Bane Green. Again, not a crazy amount of cards that I've seen people utilizing with him in Cad Bane Red. The main two have been like Martian Row and Aura Singh. Outside of that, you're not really seeing a whole lot because you do want Underworld cards. I've seen like what's it called, the Strike Ship be an option here for Cad Bane. Outside of that, there really hasn't been all that much because you really want to, as I said, play the Underworld cards, which means you want to stay away from like Shin or the force-based decks or anything like that. But still, just goes to show you he's been an amazing leader to keep his S tier spot. Next up, we got Barris. Really, really cool options you have with Now There Are Two of Them and the force-based game plan. Now there are two of them, giving you essentially a 4-cost reduction on a unit the next turn. On turn 2, could do some absolutely disgusting things. I think I saw something where someone was like, dude, if you play the Barris Red and you play, it was on the hot decks of Star Wars Unlimited database, which was kind of fun to watch. If you play like Strike Ship turn 1 into Now There Are Two of Them, Martian Row, after you've attacked with Strike Ship, you get a massively powered up, Strike Ship because it's going to double up the raid. And then you can like attack in with the Strike Ship and then ready it up again. And then like all this stuff. And you can just basically kill someone on turn 3, which is really, really cool. But that doesn't happen all the time. And it's not super consistent. To me, Barris is like that B tier, low B tier option. Can do like the Overwhelming Barrage and that type of stuff, which is pretty interesting for cheaper if you want to go that direction. You can play Force Throw on turn 1 with like the Mysterious Hermit, which is kind of cool. But outside of that, hasn't been that powerful. Grand Inquisitor, basically a souped up Jin, in my opinion, a better Jin. Although you have to use the Force for it, you kind of want to do that anyways with Grand Inquisitor. It's a good game plan. You get a 3/5 shielded unit. But use a Force to give something -2/-0 when you attack it is going to be very specific as to when it's going to be good. And your opponent could definitely bypass that by just knocking out your units initially. So you have to get initial attacks in order to generate the Force, unless you're playing like Version's Temple, for example. And that means that you are kind of in a specific game plan here with Grand Inquisitor that's not going to be all that powerful against some matchups. To me, he is like a C tier option, but on the lower end of it, certainly. Lando utilizing Ye Old Smuggle, which has not been all that fantastic. Yeah, Lando just, there's some cool things you can do, but he is literally getting nothing from set 5 in terms of Smuggle, because that's what you're trying to do. I mean, I suppose you could play some of the set 5 cards, but he just doesn't get anything much from set 5. I do think he is like not horrible. I think you're going to end up in the C tier for Lando, and be, I guess reasonably happy. And you know what? I'm going to keep my Padme in C tier, but I'm going to put Rey and Chirrut down in the D tier. I'm gonna keep Padme in the C tier just to trigger some people a little bit. Maybe you guys don't get the joke when you see the end of the tier list, like, whoa, suddenly he thought Chirrut and Rey were worse than Padme. We got to put Padme in the C tier, guys. We got to keep her there. Next up, we've got Cal Kestis. So people have been pretty high on Cal Kestis. People are like calling him the new Quinlan. I don't think so at all. Like, not even close. You want to play a Force deck with Cal, otherwise his ability does absolutely nothing. And if you're playing a Force deck with Cal, you're not using Tarkentown, which I think is one of the strongest things with Quinlan. And then you get a 3/4 to deploy, which is just absolutely atrocious. Not enough power, not enough toughness to survive a lot of things, not enough value from exhausting your opponent's units. It could do some things decently. I think he's like a C tier option. I think he's kind of similar to Fennec in that you have some game plan here. In Cal's case, you exhaust units to be able to get in more attacks. In Fennec's case, you ambush them out to get some value immediately. Both cunning, heroism, aggressive strategies, and it's just okay. Qui-Gon Jinn, the last cunning leader we have, with the exception of the two banned ones. Qui-Gon Jinn going in as a pretty solid value-based option. You're going to play him, you're going to get some force, you're going to be able to double trigger some Ahsokas, and if you're playing command, you can even like play Kelleran Beck, bounce him, play a 6-drop. Honestly, the strongest thing I've done with Qui-Gon Jinn is like on the 5th turn of the game, you have your Depa Billaba and you play Depa Billaba and you ambush something, and then you bounce Depa Billaba with Qui-Gon's ability and you play Plo Koon, and then you get another ambush in, and then you flip Qui-Gon and then you bounce Plo Koon, and then you play Ahsoka, so now you get to discard something. So you've attacked their hand, attacked their board, and then you have Depa Billaba and Plo Koon for future ambushes, which is absolutely amazing. And then you can play things like Qui-Gon Jinn or Kelleran Beck. Definitely a high value oriented dirtily leader. I think he's going to be somewhere around the middle portion of B tier. It kind of reminds me of like Akbar and Thrawn in that these are kind of like dirtily kind of combo based options. Not combo necessarily in the traditional sense, but like 2 to 3 card options that really synergize well together and give you a lot of value, but you have to be able to compete in those games. Like, you have to not like get completely overrun in some circumstances. But that is all of the aspected leaders. We get to talk about Revan and Anakin now before we wrap up. And we have entered the truly painful part of the list at this point. Revan, my absolute goat of a character in Star Wars, sitting solidly in the C tier. Honestly, he is just pretty mediocre. You can do some powerful things. The coolest thing that you can do with him, in my opinion, is like do the thing always 2 with Vigilance, or you could also go with the aggression strategy and just play a bunch of high value events, like, and then play like Fallen Lightsaber on your Darth Revan. But honestly, I've been most impressed with Revan Vigilance, because you get things like bolstered endurance and cheer it to protect your Revan. You get always 2 with Darth Malak and Darth Tyrannus. But Revan being a 5-deploy 3/6 and having an ability to where you have to trade, you have to kill enemy units in order to get more value, guys, like, they did not give enough power to even do any of that. Like, 4 power would have been reasonable. 4/6 restore 1, I think he would have been a B tier leader. Like, I think that's as far as he would have gone. But at least give him a 4/6 body. Like, well, honestly, Revan should have been like a 5/5. I think that would have been something that would have been actually interesting. And not only that, but also on his front side action, you could even modify it to where +1/+0, like an actual action, give a unit +1/+0 if you attack a unit. And if that unit defeats that unit, you get to go ahead and give an experience token to the unit that just attacked. So really, really high value, and something that honestly wouldn't work with like Darth Tyrannus. Like, you wouldn't be able to ambush things out, but at least the units you play would have been able to utilize the action to get experience tokens when they punch up in terms of power. Like, something like that. Please make Revan the GOAT a good leader in the future, FFG, please. Please make them a good leader. I want my Revan gameplay. Please. All I want to do is go to a Galactic Championship, bust out my Revan deck, slap it on the board, and say what? And, you know, play my, bust out my Revan mat, bust out my Revan lightsaber, and just set it all on the board, and then just let my opponent concede. That's all I want to do. But I can't do it because Revan is a C tier leader. Probably a D tier, honestly. Oh, no, it's not D tier. It's not cheer it. It's not Holdo level, but it is a C tier. Okay, it is a C tier. Maybe I was a little harsh on it because I'm upset. I think he is like one of the better C tiers, because I do think always 2 and like the stuff I just mentioned is pretty good. But guys, he's not better than C tier in my opinion. I just think that is the case. He is a pretty weak leader. Anakin Skywalker. This one is probably one of the ones that I'm most disappointed with the new set. Initially, I was thinking it could be really strong. Honestly, the fact that you're missing an aspect, this also applies to Revan, by the way, is a really, really big downside. And even though you can make up for the fact that you're missing an aspect by, playing Overwhelming Barrage and Power of the Dark Side in the Villainy side of things, or Fallen Lightsaber, or whatever cards you're interested in playing in the Villainy side of things, your payoff for playing a force-based deck is to play good, solid events. Really, the only one that I'm exceptionally excited about from that list is Overwhelming Barrage. That is the one I'm excited about. Outside of that, yes, Power of the Dark Side is strong. Yes, it is. But it doesn't usually function on turn 2 for you all that well in most games. Fallen Lightsaber is good, yes, but you can also just play Jedi Lightsaber on Anakin. The other card that I'm really excited about with Anakin is the Anakin Skywalker unit. And because of that, I put Palpatine kind of on the lower end of B tier. I think I'm going to put Anakin on the higher end of B tier. Well, just a little bit above Palpatine, really, because realistically, it's very similar in the payoff. Anakin is a massive payoff for the Anakin leader, but overall, it's just not that powerful of a deck. And he is kind of just floating by just playing a solid couple of villainy cards and then just having a 4/6 leader to play, which is not bad at all. But that is all of our leaders, guys. We got to talk about this list just a little bit here before we wrap up. I just want to say, I do think you can make a lot of adjustments to this list, period. As with every list I have ever made, this is entirely a subjective tier list, as per typical. I do think the S tier, most people are pretty agreed upon in general, is what we're kind of experiencing with the meta. Like, most people kind of are in the same point. Like, I've seen a couple other people talking about, okay, what do I think the meta is going to be? This is kind of what most people are viewing, and that's what we've just experienced. I think you could argue that these should be S tier, and I think if this was your list, I'd be totally reasonably happy with it. I think Talzin and Obi-Wan actually have a shot in the meta. I don't know if they're actually going to be top meta decks, is the only thing that prevented me from putting them in the S tier, and that's really just a little bit of trepidation from the early going-ons of the set. And I'm a little bit more conservative than I used to be in terms of rating leaders, because the meta has just been so much bigger. When you're rating like set 2 or set 3 car leaders, you had so few leaders comparatively that a lot of leaders had a shot at being meta immediately. Whereas now you have very established, like Han, Vader, Cad Bane, Sabine. Like, a lot of these top leaders are leaders that have very established track records. Vader's the only new one, really. And if you look at an entirety of set 4, what is another set 4 leader? Kazuda, Boba Fett is the next ones, and they're like deep into the A tier. So that's kind of what I've seen, is like a lot of the leaders that we've been used to are just very consistently good. And I am very curious to see if Obi-Wan and Talzin are going to put up the results to actually prove that they deserve to be in the S tier. I personally have had better results with Obi-Wan than I have had with Talzin in terms of my own personal game plan, but I have also seen people absolutely destroy with Talzin in many different situations. I think Talzin is absolutely fantastic, and I think Obi-Wan's absolutely fantastic. Those are the two I'm most excited to see in the meta, really. I also think if you look at the top decks, a lot of those are just good because they're good. And I think they just shape well up against the meta. The only deck, really, that has changed its entire game plan is Han. Han is the only S tier list up there where it has really shaped the entire deck from set 5. You have the new Grogu. You have the new Ki-Adi-Mundi. You get the new Adi Gallia and Gunji if you want to play that. You get the new Obi-Wan and General's Blade if you go that direction. Caloran Beck, Yoda, massive payoffs. Like, a ton of the cards from new Han, the set 2 new Han from set 5, is really shaped around the Force mechanic. And the same thing applies for Vigilance Han, right? You get, again, the new Grogu, best turn 1 play, but you also get new Ogdo Bogdo. You can even play Anakin in the list. You got so many new options that are absolutely fantastic from set 5. The next deck that got the most, in my opinion, is Kira with the new Vader. And that's pretty much it. Whether it's Data Vault and Timely Interventioning out Vader, or if it's E-Sailing out Vader, that's the other list that got the most from these S tier lists. unless you put Talzin and Obi-Wan in S tier, which also got an absolute buttload because they're mainly set 5 lists. The leader is, and then they have a lot of Force synergies, which really function pretty nicely. I think Force is going to have a good option of being a meta contender as a mechanic. So that's why Talzin and Obi-Wan are so high. But I'm very curious to hear what you all have to say. I think there's very arguable options. I think when you start to get to the lower end of B, C, and D tier, well, B and C tier really, lower end of B tier, and then higher to mid end of C tier, I think there's a lot of interchangeable positions, to be honest. So I think if you were to argue any of those, I would just kind of agree with you for the most part. But I think when you get to the S and A and the high end of B tier, those are the ones where they have something going for them that a lot of other decks don't, and that can really push them a lot of wins than other decks. So let me know what you think about the tier list, guys. Thanks for watching, everyone. This was a long one. I'll see you all for the next one.